That's excellent. I'm glad. Jessica.
I like the chart because if I saw that, I would think Thomas J. was somebody in school was friends with Ben.
Well,
Ben, did you have a friend named Thomas?
if Ben was friends with
No,
Jefferson, then he shouldn't be in
friends.
8th
He
grade.
has no friends.
I do have
No,
some
you don't. I
imaginary
see you every
friends.
day at recess, you have no friends.
All right, simmer down. If he was friends with Thomas Jefferson, he probably wouldn't be in 8th grade. Probably be dead.
Would I get extra points if I wrote sentences in my chart?
So, not really. The point of each one is to make sure that you get the information you need. So it's not necessarily important that you write a full sentence. It's important that you know what you need.
So I won't get extra points?
Not for the sentence, unless it's important.
Are you counting spelling?
I'm not going to actually count spelling because you guys are going to be developing your own shorthand.
It's bothering me.
My mom lets me play the drums.
Well, the drums aren't in this classroom. Save it for music, please. Band's fifth period.
It's so fun. That's how I feel.
Does anyone like the sentence structure better? Jessica?
Yeah, I like it better
Why
because it's less work.
Less work? That's fair. That's why most college students prefer it. Todd?
Sentences have words.
Sentences do have words.
And you have
And you have the
best
best.
words.
And you have great words.
Thank you.
You have excellent
Better
words.
for it.
You can. I was just about to mention that. If you're having trouble coming up with the right word, or if you think a good picture,
He's writing on a page.
please keep your hands to yourself, Johnny.
I didn't touch her.
Johnny, do I have to move you?
No.
Thank you. But Demicus, right, you can draw pictures. So a friend of mine, when we were talking about this, mentioned that she liked to draw an Abe Lincoln hat next to anything that involved Abe Lincoln. You know, the big old stovepipe hat that made him look even taller than he was? She liked to draw that next to something that had to do with Lincoln. That way she didn't have to write Abe Lincoln out every time.
The one they pull rabbits out of.
Yes, very similar to the ones that pull rabbits out, even taller though. So what we're gonna do next, guys, is I'm gonna play a podcast for you, which Johnny asked about earlier. A podcast is basically it's kind of a talk radio show, but you put it on the internet, you can listen to it at any time. I'm gonna play it for about 5 minutes, and I want you guys to pull out a new piece of paper. If you don't have one, please ask your neighbor. And you're just, you can use the back of your paper if you want. Put your name at the top.
This was great.
Make it gently.
Huh?
Ready?
Yeah.
You all right, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Everyone have a piece of paper? So pick your favorite style of the two we've talked. I'm going to play a few minutes of this podcast. Just take notes on what you hear, what you think is important, what you might think is just interesting for you, but especially focus on the stuff you think might be important. And then put your name at the top, and you're going to hand them in at the end of the classroom, so that or at the end of the class, so that I can take a look at it and see how you guys are doing. Everyone get that? Thumbs up if you understand.
I have a question.
Get to your question in just a moment. Thumbs up if everybody understands. Allison?
Sure.
Johnny?
Yep.
Okay, Jessica.
Is this going to be per grade?
Yes, but the grade is if I get it or not. So if you don't hand it in, 0. If you hand it in, I'm going to make comments on it and hand it back to you tomorrow, and we're going to talk about it more. All right?
She's in there.
Yeah, seriously.
Is everybody ready?
At least I'm going to go to college.
So am I.
Are you calling me
For
stupid?
sports, yeah.
Johnny, Allison. Everybody ready? We're at a voice level 0, guys, all right?
She never gets in trouble.
A voice level 0, please.
Guys, we got to get this little lesson.
I got it, Jessica. Thank you.
And colonial leaders seemed to go about their business. There remained, of course, the continuing British attempts
Where's the
to enforce
video?
customs laws.
No video.
The colonies continued to smuggle much of their trade in avoidance of these laws. And the one significant issue during this period was the 1772 attack on the Gaspé that I discussed back in episode 36. Beyond that, it was the usual cat-and-mouse game between smugglers and customs officials, supported by the Navy. Colonies never really claimed a right to smuggle goods, though, so the only political issue was the fight over what tactics officials could use to search colonists. Politically, the dispute over the tea tax remained a sticking point. The tax had been part of the original Townsend duties in 1767, and was the only part of the tax still in effect. Importers in the colonies had to pay 3 pence per pound on imported tea. The colonists had decided that this duty was for revenue rather than trade regulation, and therefore unconstitutional. Parliament had decided that the whiny colonies were going to learn their place. They would have to accept this duty and should just be grateful that they did not have to pay even higher taxes. The resulting standoff led to the non-importation agreements that had been in effect for many years. Colonists would not import British tea. Anyone who tried to import tea could lose customers or suffer mob action against their person or property. Today we would call this a boycott, but since the term would not be invented until Charles Boycott ticked off some Irish tenants more than a century later, I've tried to avoid using that term. The agreements did not stop tea imports entirely, but the more than 600,000 pounds of tea per year that the colonists had imported before the Townshend Act now averaged just 260 pounds per year in the 3 years of the non-importation agreements. Colonists continued to smuggle Dutch tea as well as adulting alternatives such as coffee, hot chocolate, and herbal teas. Since 1770, Britain had collected a total of less than 10,000 pounds sterling for the 3 years combined, far less than it had spent on customs enforcement. The biggest victim of the standoff was the East India Company. The company existed as a private corporation which had a British monopoly on all trade with half of the globe. It had received this monopoly from Queen Elizabeth I way back in 1600. Before then, the British had relied on Spanish and Portuguese traders from Asia. With the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, the British took control of the seas and decided to create their own trading system. Although the East India Company existed as a private company, it acted as an arm of the British government almost from the beginning. Its stockholders included many members of Parliament. It maintained its own army and navy, and at times its own currency, and conducted diplomacy with foreign powers, all with the cooperation and backing of the British government. It also became the first major international drug trafficker, illegally importing opium into China. The company maintained
He's got a
wide
really
range of
exciting
trade
voice,
goods from
doesn't he?
Asia. It did not even be
Very interesting topic. I picked something that was kind of boring for you guys so that you could practice on something that was kind of boring. It's also probably much more detailed than anything we'll go into in this class later in the year, but I wanted to see how you guys could do with something a little bit different. I can kind of get a gauge of where you're at. So how did you guys feel about this? How did you feel about your note-taking?
I draw a picture,
You drew a picture?
big T, right, it's boycott, right? Is that what?
Yeah, that's a great picture to help you understand the colonists didn't want boycott. Maybe I would draw a picture of a little tricorn cat or something related to the colonies next to it so that you know that the colonists were the ones doing the boycott.
I didn't write down sentences, I just wrote down words that I heard.
Hey,
That's from the other Jessica. They always do stuff.
it was not.
He's
I'm not
framing.
She's got a good arm.
One more time, you're going to stay in class and I have to talk to you.
Alright, fine.
We're gonna talk after class.
I will talk after class. You will move on to your
Okay,
next
you're not
class.
the only girl. who
So
wants
what
to
were you
talk
saying?
after Class.
Pick up to the whole class.
mature.
I'm not
Voice-
your sus, and I get
Voice
girl
level
friends.
0, your classmate is speaking. Rob?
I didn't write down sentences, I just wrote down like words that I heard before.
That's great. That'll help to trigger memories. So a lot of note taking is about please no more throwing paper.
Are you gonna talk to her after class?
Yes, sir.
Alright, cool.
This is mine.
Fair.
So I'll get right to you, Carly. A lot of note taking is about triggering memories so that you remember what was told earlier. So writing down key words like that, that's a great idea. Carly?
I feel like there's a lot of big words, and I wish that I could have seen pictures.
Yeah, that is a downside to podcasts. You can't show pictures and whatnot. Most of my lectures, I'll have pictures or I'll be here to help explain things to you guys. But if you want to learn on your own and listen to a podcast, that's a good way to learn. But I did pick something more challenging, just so that you guys could push yourselves a little bit. Anyone else? Johnny?
I drew a cat and mouse because the guy said they play cat and mouse.
Okay, but what was the cat and mouse in relation to?
Like the cat from Cat Dog and the mouse from Mickey, like Disney.
Not quite.
Cat dog is neither a cat nor a dog.
What's playing
he's
cat and
definitely
mouse?
a
So what's playing cat and mouse? That's a good question. So, do you know what playing cat and mouse is,
I
Johnny?
was just gonna ask if you're a dog guy or a cat guy.
I like dogs. But playing cat and mouse means that there's a mouse is trying to escape and the cat is trying to catch it. So in relation to this lecture, they were talking about smugglers and customs officials. What that meant was basically people who were trying to sneak tea in like, illegally versus the British Navy. So maybe
Oh, like
in
the Mexican border.
like
Yes.
Mexican border, yeah. So maybe for that note, you might want to draw something on the cat, like a British flag,
Okay.
and something on the mouse, like a pirate flag, so that you know that it means the British Navy and the smugglers.
Like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes. Pirates of the Caribbean is an excellent movie. Not so great the sequels. Anybody else have anything on their note taking today?
Why was tea so important? Because it's gross.
Tea was very popular back before they had pop.
Okay.
Before we had these very sugary drinks, you had things like tea and coffee, and people still drink them a lot.
Did they
But
drink
they were-
coffee?
They did drink some coffee back then, and we'll talk more about this later, they actually started drinking more coffee because they were boycotting the tea. That's why coffee is so popular in America today, actually.
Good.
My mom likes coffee.
Mine too.
Coffee's a lot of moms really like coffee. Someday you may understand why. So that's gonna be my sum up. Everyone please pass, do not move your seat, pass your notes up to the front. I'm gonna look these over with you guys, and I'm gonna get back to you on them tomorrow. And we're gonna go over the four side. The two of you, I'm gonna have to, your seats will be changed tomorrow.
No, come on.
Your
Seriously,
seats
why?
Because if you can't keep your hands to yourself, you can't keep your seat.
I didn't touch it.
We all know that's not true.
That is definitely true. Watch the video.
You were also throwing paper. So maybe you just need to sit up front where it'll help you to pay attention.
Well, I have 20/20, so put me on
All
the
right.
rest of the board.
Reinforcing the rules, I told you at the beginning.